As Franklin Roosevelt put it, December 7th, 1931, is a day that will live in infamy. On this day, 2,390 American lives were lost and many more were wounded when two waves of Japanese planes attacked the American naval base at Pearl Harbor near Honolulu, Hawaii. This is an account of the attack on Pearl Harbor. Japan and the United States had been working to establish peaceful terms after the U.S. placed an oil embargo on Japan. The Japanese diplomats had led the Americans to believe, right up to the day of the attack, that they were making progress and things were going well. Little did the Americans know that by 6:15 that morning, 6 Japanese aircraft carriers were already located due north of Pearl Harbor, and that 183 Japanese bombers, fighters, and torpedo planes had taken off for Pearl Harbor under the leadership of Commander Mitsuo Fuchida. A series of events occurred that could have warned the naval base that something bad was happening. However, in each case scenario, something prevented the warning from getting through. In the water, the USS Ward, an American destroyer, spotted a submarine and sank it. The destroyer informed headquarters of the incident, but headquarters determined that they would wait for a verification report to do anything. Another incident that could have warned the naval base occurred in the Opana radar station. The station had picked up a large formation of planes on the radar, but officials mistakenly assumed them to be American Fortress bombers flying between California and Hawaii. A third potential warning occurred in Washington, D.C. A message sent to the Japanese diplomats from Japan was decoded and found to be calling the diplomats to break off the peace talks. Due to the static in the atmosphere, the quickest way to warn Pearl Harbor was to send a telegraph. Unfortunately, the telegraph didn't arrive in Pearl Harbor until 11:45 a.m., over 3 hours after the first wave of Japanese planes bombed the harbor. At about 8 o'clock, the first wave of Japanese planes attacked the harbor, focusing at first on the multiple air stations and airfields on the island. The Americans had stored their planes from wingtip to wingtip to protect them from sabotage, and nearly all of the American planes on the fields were wiped out, making it extremely difficult for the Americans to retaliate or defend themselves from the air. The first wave of the attack also focused on bombing Hickam Field near Ford Island's Battleship Row. Battleship Row is exactly what it sounds like, and 7 of the base's 9 ships were docked in a row and were vulnerable to the Japanese attacks. The USS Arizona was one of the destroyers in Battleship Row and was hit by an armor-piercing bomb during the first wave of the attack. The bomb ignited gunpowder on board the vessel, and the explosion broke the vessel in two and sunk it in a total of 9 minutes. 1,177 men lost their lives when the USS Arizona went down. Along with the USS Arizona, the USS California, USS West Virginia, USS Oklahoma, USS Utah, USS Maryland, and USS Tennessee were also either capsized, rolled, or significantly damaged. The USS Nevada tried to make its way out of the harbor, but was hit and forced to run aground in order to avoid blocking off the entrance to the harbor. Around 8:40 a.m., the second wave of Japanese planes arrived. This wave focused on bombing more of the internal structures of the harbor. The Japanese bombed the dry docks, destroying the USS Shaw, hitting the battleship USS Pennsylvania, and blowing up an oil tank between the destroyers USS Cassin and Downs. Fortunately for the U.S., none of the Americans' aircraft carriers were in the harbor at the time of the attacks. The Japanese were extremely disappointed by this and could have more seriously damaged the American Pacific Fleet had they known the whereabouts of any of the carriers. The U.S. was also fortunate to come out of the attacks with their oil stores intact and much of their harbor still intact, making it possible for them to recover quickly. American wounded flooded the hospitals on the island and were placed anywhere available. Nurses did what they could for all of the soldiers, but the death toll was staggering. The next day, President Franklin Roosevelt gave his Day of Infamy speech to Congress, and Congress proceeded to declare war on Japan.